Hello everyone, this is part 1 of What If Naruto Was a Prodigy Called the Red Demon. This story is made by Foy the Snooze button, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. He didn't know what his father expected from him. The lights fell around him, popping quietly and finally stopped showering down as the opponent stopped attacking. Enough. He could vaguely hear his father say, and a pair of booted sandals entered his line of sight. Get up. Minato commanded and frowned sharply when Naruto struggled off his knees, shakily rising to his feet. Why are you not attacking? Naruto looked down to the ground, his left arm supporting his stomach and his face in a controlled, neutral expression as he panted a little for air. I can't hit her, she's my sister. The tall blonde man stayed silent for a minute and Naruto didn't speak. He looked down on his red-haired son, who was wearing a black short-sleeved shirt and short black pants, white sandals and bandages wrapped around his fists. A kunai and shuriken pouch were perched safely on his left thigh and right waist respectively. While his older twin sister wore a white short-sleeved shirt and white shorts with black sandals, there were white bandages wrapped around her neck and shoulders. Her weapon pouches were in the same places as his. The blonde 9-year-old girl looked at her brother's face with concern and turned her purple eyes down when he glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. The red bruise that was growing on his cheek intimidated her. She didn't think her kick would cause that. Her brother had been dodging her attacks and she had followed after because she knew his fighting style since she too was using it, but he probably decided that it was too boring dodging, so he allowed those two hits to connect. Minato's blue eyes flickered to her, then back to her brother, and he said, "She doesn't have any problems hitting you. Your academy teachers say that you are a prodigy, so much so that they recommend you graduate 3 early. Where is this skill they speak so highly about? Where is it?" He shouted, but Naruto remained unshaken by it. Rather, he looked at him with fiery purple eyes and said, defiant, "I will not hit my sister." Minato scowled and stared down his son. Relenting soon after, he finally turned to his blonde daughter and asked, "Why would you hit him if he refuses to hit you back?" The girl shook a little under his eyes and said, "Brother said it was fine." "Is that so?" The Hokage mused as he turned around and scratched his cheek. The 3 Namikaze clan members were training in the special training ground in their home's backyard. There was enough space for a small river, luscious grass and clean air. It would have been a great place for a picnic if the older man had not designated the place to be used for training. His thoughts wandered on his children. Rin Namikaze was a mirror image of his late wife, Kushina Uzumaki, but she lacked the patented Uzumaki attitude, which was compensated by her brains and skills. She had also been recommended to graduate early by her teachers when they found out that they couldn't teach her anything new. He just wanted to evaluate them on whether or not they were truly ready to enter into the shinobi world. Naruto Namikaze also looked like Kushina, but he lacked both of their attitudes. He was more of a plain-faced child, colorless and merging into the background. Minato was aware of the reason for this, watching his mother D protecting their now 5-year-old baby sister. Naruto used to be so bright and happy, now he moved around with shadows in his eyes and an empty expression. He could barely keep a handle on him anymore, seeing as he wasn't always at home. The only reason he was able to know about what was going on with him was through Rin, but even the girl was barely ever away from Naruto's side. Minato regretted the day he allowed the 2 kids to wait outside Kushina's hospital room. It had been Naruto that had watched the light leave Kushina's eyes with her head lying on her husband's lap. His sister had been knocked out by a shockwave when the Kyuubi smashed a tail near them. The Yondaime wasn't aware that Naruto blamed his inability to think quickly, forcing his mother, who literally leapt off the hospital bed after giving birth to young Mikoto minutes before, to take them to safety. After this, she ran back with her dual katana to fend off the tailed beast long enough for them to seal it into Mikoto and her, before D with half of Kyuubi's chakra. He and his sister had followed her and watched the devastating fight between an Uzumaki and a tailed beast, ending with the Sandaime pushing the Yondaime away from the D-Reaper seal matrix and sacrificing his own life to seal half of the beast into Kushina and the other half into Mikoto. Years later and Naruto still wasn't past her D. Her D changed Minato too. He got more ruthless and his tolerance thinned, especially when he was faced with inadequacies with his ninja force. He turned back to his children and watched as Rin worriedly placed her hands on her brother's cheeks. The boy shook his head a little and there was a small, barely even visible upward twitch of his lips, but she caught it. She beamed back widely and he rolled his eyes. Minato suspected that they had some sort of wordless communication. Now that he looked at them, they looked like physical manifestations of light and darkness. One couldn't live without the other and both balanced each other out. Rin was bright and friendly. No one could keep a grudge with her because she was just too nice. Naruto was seldom ever seen and he resonated empty nothingness if he was seen, thankfully not the evil kind. He suspected that Naruto was better than Rin when it came to combat and knowledge, but he wanted to see it for himself if the boy ever really wanted to graduate early. That was when he made his decision. Tiger. He called and looked to his right when a tiger-masked Anbu operative flickered to his side. Summon Fugaku immediately. Tell him to come with Itachi. Yes sir. And he was gone in a well-executed body flicker jutsu. His children had now forgotten about his presence, as Rin was now chattering into Naruto's ear about something only they would understand, while the boy's eyebrows were partially raised as he listened. His hands were in his pockets and he leaned back a little when the girl flapped her hands as she described something to him. Iruka-sensei called it a tree warthog, but it looked more like an awagakure pig. She waited for him to speak. Why do you think that? Well, you see, a tree hog is green and an Iwa pig is brown with a short horn on its forehead, just like the one he pointed at. She was talking about a time in class that Iruka had shown him a picture of a tree hog, but she had objected and called it an Iwa pig. Naruto could remember the day very well. She was seated beside him and had to hold her back from lunging at the academy teacher. Naruto was about to speak, but a cough interrupted them. He looked to the side at the person and remained neutral when he saw that it was his academy rival, Itachi Uchiha. Both stoic boys narrowed their stares, before they looked at their fathers, who nodded to each other in respect. Minato spoke first. Since you don't want to fight your sister, then you will fight your cousin. Will that be a problem? Itachi was in a long-sleeved black shirt and white shorts with white bandages also wrapped around his fist, like Naruto. No. Both prodigies unanimously replied. Both fathers smirked. They could taste the tension in the air as both cool boys glared at each other. The wind picked up around them as this happened. Minato dragged Rin away, who was openly glaring at her Uchiha cousin with bared teeth. Get into your stances. The 9-year-old boys lowered into their respective fighting stances. Itachi in the Uchiha Taijutsu stance and Naruto in the Hummingbird Taijutsu stance. No holding back, Minato declared. Don't plan to. They muttered to themselves and their eyes twisted, forming 3 Tomo Sharingan. Fugaku tried to suppress his surprise. It wasn't their first time witnessing Naruto's Sharingan. He knew that the Namikaze clan, a clan that was almost extinct, were an offshoot of Indra Otsutsuki's second son. They weren't able to unlock their Sharingan since the genes were extremely recessive. In return for not inheriting their forefathers' dojutsu, they were gifted with unnatural, bloodline speed and shared a high affinity for ninjutsu along with their Uchiha cousins. The reason the Namikaze were reduced to solely the Hokage's family was because the chances of reproducing in either gender were incredibly slim. Luckily for Minato, he married an Uzumaki whom he loved, so his chances increased exponentially. Namikaze couldn't unlock their Sharingan. History was proof enough. Minato swore to investigate into his late wife's genealogy after the match. Rin looked on, hoping that this fight with Itachi didn't end up like the last one, both of them with fingers, sprained calves and slight concussions. Alright, hand-to-hand alone fight. Begin. One thing that Naruto had inherited from his father was speed. Not just the simple ability to run fast, but the ability to move so quickly he was able to make up to 5 clones of himself without using jutsu, even at his age. He called them his ghost clones since they couldn't be touched but they could touch their opponents. He predicted that when he was older, he would be able to make hundreds of ghost clones, maybe even 1,000. His ability to make speed clones wasn't something he used all the time, seeing as the stress was monumental, so he resorted to not making any clones to face his eternal rival. Itachi had been fighting Naruto for as long as he could remember, and even though he could attest to knowing most of his moves second to only Rin, he still didn't know enough to make Naruto completely predictable. The same with Naruto to Itachi. Naruto's body flickered from where he stood and Itachi leaned to the side away from a punch to his neck and swung his leg. Naruto caught the limb with both hands but let go when the Uchiha had a kunai slip out of his sleeve to slash his hands. The red-haired speedster appeared in front of Itachi and a speedy taijutsu match ensued, so fast that every time that contacted for a counter or a defense a short burst of light flashed from that point. In truth, Itachi couldn't keep up with Naruto's raw speed, but his bloodline was working overtime to see 5 steps ahead of Naruto. His muscles were screaming at the strain of pushing his physical limits. He stepped back when he saw an opening and threw his leg straight at Naruto's stomach, air blasting from the boy's mouth on contact, but it didn't distract him long enough. He thrust his knee upwards at the leg and clipped the Uchiha Prodigy's ankle as it was hastily pulled back. Itachi winced from this and hopped away. He saw that his ankle was inflamed from the last counter. He had to keep his distance. He flashed through 3 hand seals. Shadow Shuriken technique. He threw a fist full of shuriken and muttered again. Molten Shuriken technique. He clenched his fists to control the flight of the hundreds of shuriken tied to the strings on his fingers. The red-haired boy looked at the attack whirring at him with dangerous speed, and his Sharingan spun quickly in their sockets. Time slowed down as he got his legs into a ready stance. The ground cracked a little as he did so. His eyes counted 507 shuriken in total that glowed bright red with fire affinity chakra and all connected back to his opponent through many strings. He grabbed 2 kunai from his left thigh pouch and channeled water affinity chakra into them as he spun them on his fingers. Water kunai blades. Water blades shot out from the kunai and spun with the blades. The burning shuriken bounced off his sharp water defense. Shards of steel peppered around him, just outside his spinning defense, and when they stopped, he threw the blades at Itachi, closely following the weapons from behind. The Uchiha kicked the blade away with the sole of his sandal and maintained momentum of his spin, sending a hook kick at Naruto and connecting it cleanly with the boy's cheek. The Namikas followed the motion of the painful blow and flipped to the side. He jumped to Itachi like a dart, but his body phased out of the air, like he was a mirage. Itachi knew better. There weren't many people in Konoha beneath the Chunin rank that were able to defeat Itachi in any sort of fight, but when it came to Naruto he was never able to win. He kept count of every loss and learned from them, but it never seemed to be enough. Most times he felt like Naruto was humoring him in their rivalry, as he knew Naruto could finish a spar in 2 minutes flat if he ever got tired of it. Like now. Ghost clone technique. There was a violent hum in the air, like electricity passing through a wire, and 5 Narutos materialized around him. They were blurry on the edges at first and hard to discern, but their features sharpened and became clearer, perfect copies of the original Naruto. The Uchiha's Sharingan wasn't able to find the real Naruto since they all had the same chakra signatures, seeing as they were simply all the same Naruto running around at such speeds that they were all formed. The 5 clones surrounded him and his Sharingan caught a small string that connected each of them. Experience had taught him that he couldn't cut through it. He almost lost his fingers last time he tried it. The humming in the air increased as the Narutos all took the same positions, their legs set like they were about to leap forward and their right fists pointed at the Uchiha in the middle of their circle. The humming stopped abruptly and all the Narutos dove at him with low Chunin speed, the default speed when Naruto used his ghost clone technique. Itachi leaped high into the air and the clones phased through each other under him. 2 jumped at him to keep him inside the string circle. The black-haired boy hissed as a blow met his stomach, but a countering kick merely passed through the clone. Perspiration from his head as he punched again, but this attack was slapped away easily and a clone behind him smashed a heel to the back of his head. This attack rocked him to the ground and the Uchiha landed on his hands, flipped to his feet and jumped over another clone. He attempted to form a jutsu but hissed in pain as a ghost string wafted over his left arm, burning off his sleeve and reddening his left arm. The pain distracted him enough for a clone to trip him and another to follow this action with an elbow straight to his chest right before he disappeared into red mist, leaving 4 clones. These clones surrounded the downed and very tired Itachi. The humming in the air increased as they stopped moving. One by one, the clones exploded into red mist, leaving just one Naruto to stand above him. Naruto looked down at his rival with dull eyes and placed his left foot on Itachi's neck. The contact had him hiss in pain from the heat resonating from the limb through the footwear, an aftermath of running at such speeds. Their Sharingan clashed dangerously as they cancelled each other's genjutsu in painful silence, until Itachi closed his eyes. That's enough, Naruto, Minato declared as he tried to understand just how much power and skill Naruto was holding back, even as he didn't have the Kyuubi. Naruto walked away from his opponent to his sister, suppressing the amused snort at the sparkling stars in her eyes. I guess your teachers were right. Naruto shrugged and sat down on the grass in a huff. He then laid down and closed his eyes. Rin giggled into her hands when she noticed that he was now snoring. Making ghost clones take a lot out of him, not just chakra. Amazing. He's just as fast as a Junin Namikaze. Fugaku commented as he helped his son to his feet. Go and treat your wounds, Itachi. Yes, father. When he wakes up, tell him that both of you are ready to graduate. Leave the team assignments to me, he finished in his mind, walking off the training ground. The white-clad Namikaze twin sat down and set her brother's head on her lap, looking at his peaceful face as she ran her fingers through his blood-red hair. A small smile played on her lips as the black-clad boy entwined his fingers together over his chest. The Namikaze twins were inseparable, almost to an irritating level. She couldn't recall a day they had been more than 20 feet apart, and that was only when they were in their separate bedrooms, even though she sometimes snuck into his room to sleep in his bed with him when she had a nightmare. True to Minato's musings, they balanced each other out. She took all the happiness and he kept the darkness away from her in himself, which would have pushed most to end their lives, but her happiness leaked to him positively and his darkness leaked to her so that she wouldn't just be all about sunshine and rainbows. Their understanding of each other was incredibly deep, with them being able to hold a long secret coded conversation around others. If they were to have a serious spar with each other, even though Naruto would win, it would take a really long time to end with them knowing each of their moves and counters to them, even to Naruto's ghost clone technique. She chose to train her senses in the silence as Naruto slept. She spread her senses around and faintly felt the few Anbu operatives that hid at the edges of the training ground. Strangely enough, even as this was an Uzumaki ability, she wasn't able to sense any of her siblings. This was why she jumped in surprise when she heard Mikoto shout from far in front of her as she ran at them. Sister. The adorable 5-year-old red-haired girl who was barely even up to their waist wore a yellow and white apron shirt with the sleeves stopping at her elbows and black shorts. There was a yellow backpack that was bouncing on her back and 3 bento tins balanced in her hands. She was running as fast as she could. Sister. I brought lunch. Rin laughed quietly as she rubbed soothing circles on the sides of Naruto's head to calm him down. The 5-year-old girl sat down next to her older siblings and blushed a little when Naruto opened a single purple eye to look at her. See. Lunch. The little girl said as she placed his lunch into his awaiting hands and gave Rin hers as well. Thank you, Mikoto. Naruto said as he sat up. How was class? Rin asked as she opened her tin and started eating their lunch of rice and beef stew. Naruto watched on with tired eyes as his sisters chatted together, adding in a few words when it was expected. He was still very sleepy for using his ghost clone for that long, but that could wait. They were having lunch. Mikoto Namikaze was being homeschooled by one of Kushina's former students, Yugao Azuki, for the past year, and the Anbu captain's summary during this year was that Minato's genius might be genetic. Mikoto hadn't entered practical knowledge yet, but she was very receptive, and although she was a little bit too playful, she had shown that she could take things seriously when she wanted. If she kept up the way she retained knowledge, then she too would graduate early from the academy if she wanted. Right now, though, the 3 Namikaze siblings were having lunch. Oh, time skip, 8 years later. If there was ever a monumental upwards movement in the Konoha shinobi ranks, it was by the Namikaze twins. After graduating from the academy at the age of 9, they had been shortly placed in a 3-cell genin team with Hinami Aburame as the 3rd member and a generic-looking Junin named Tomoe Fukunaga as their team sensei. This team arrangement was seen by many as simply a formality for each genin to rank up to Chunin so that they could branch out on their own, even though they still remained close after disbanding Team Tomoe. They had been subjected to the horrors of D and E rank missions for only a month before it was clear that they would be completed with speed alone through the twins or with poison beetles by Hinami. They were given retrieval, capture, reconnaissance and theft missions, even though they were still genin. These missions were cleared with a little effort, pacifying the genin long enough until they grew up and requested for harder missions. These higher missions were for higher-ranked shinobi, which was when their sensei nominated them for the Chunin exams that were to be taken place in Snow Country, not even 6 months after they graduated from the academy. After becoming Chunin, the team more or less split up, with Hinami choosing to work as a hunter ninja and the twins choosing to work together as freelance Konoha ninja, which were ninja that specialized in nearly every aspect of shinobi life. They were among the youngest ever Junin at the age of 12 with the most A and B class missions among their peers. It was even commonplace for the Hokage to give them 3A rank missions at a sitting. This increased the flow of revenue to Konoha and increased their notoriety in the elemental nations. Internally, most didn't even see it as bias because it was clear that his children clearly deserved their ranks. As the years flew by, the twins ranked up to performing S-class missions, one at a time, with the occasional A, B or C class from time to time. No mission was left uncompleted and no mission was without high distinction. It came as no surprise that, just as the monikers came rolling in, the bingo book entries followed too. They were wanted on more than a half a dozen countries with S-class priority levels but with specific orders to flee on sight. Kumogakur Bingo Book. Entry number 356. Rank S-Team. Monikers Case 2, the Red Sun, the Yellow Moon, and the Ghost Flash. Names Namikaze Naruto and Namikaze Rin. Ages 17 years, twins. Affiliations Village hidden in the leaves, Namikaze Clan, Uchiha Clan. Bloodlines Sharingan, Ghost Speed Release, Flash Step Release, Sensor Type, Hyper Awareness, Chakra Construction. Family, Relatives Minato Namikaze, father, Uzumaki Kushina, mother, deceased, Mikoto Namikaze, sister, Senju Tsunade, godmother, estranged, Hiruzen Sarutobi, godfather, deceased, the Uchiha clan, cousin clan. Information. The Ghost Flash are both remarkably young Junin that have carved a path through the elemental nations as ninjas near impossible to defeat. It is believed that they are both of equal strengths and their teamwork is high S rank alone, but their individual strengths also set them apart. Namikaze Rin, the Angel of Konoha, is able to use the rare Flash Step bloodline, which is part of why she is referred to as the Sun Half. She possesses incredible strength and noteworthy physical fortitude. Take care not to enrage her. Namikaze Naruto, the Red Demon, is not readily seen, though his disposition is mostly calm and controlled. He possesses the higher form of the Flash Step release, the Ghost Speed release, and is able to use the Sharingan with great skill. They are credited for taking down the dreaded deity of Demon Country, destroying the village hidden in the tsunami, killing of the Iron and Steel brothers and severely wounding the lightning holder, Rai of Kumogakur. Despite this, not much is known of them or their abilities besides the obvious. It is advised that when encountered, whether together or individually, do not attempt to engage. Flee on sight. On the page left of the bingo book entry was a picture of Naruto and Rin. Rin had her back to the camera, elegantly peering over her shoulder. Her beauty so much that it shone, forming a vague halo atop her head. On her back were a pair of bright yellow wings, like that of a hummingbird, and a long tanto held out in her right hand that dripped with bee. She was in a midriff, sleeveless white shirt with the Namikaze clan symbol on the back that showed off her toned stomach just under the black mesh armor shirt and long white anbu pants. There were also black forearm protectors on her and a white sheath for her tanto slung on her back. She was looking directly at the person taking the camera, innocence shining through fierce purple eyes, but also a bloodlust that permeated off her very being. The bee dotting her clothes could testify to that. Her forehead protector, perched safely on her temple, glinted ominously. Naruto was behind her facing the camera, a little to the side so that the cameraman could see Rin's back, but not enough to leave her open. He was in a long-sleeved black shirt that also had the Namikaze symbol on the back, and black pants similar to his sister's. The younger twin had 4 black wings jutting from his back as well, but his angled down so that they didn't stab her, grazing the ground. He was looking down slightly, allowing his red hair to shadow his eyes as he gripped his own, drenched with bee. Around them was pure, inhuman carnage. The D, or injured Kumo ninja scattered around them. It looked to be about sunset and they were fighting back to back in a deserted market village in hidden hot springs. The twins lived by a code, even though ninja didn't have codes, and this was to show their strength only a little, leaving the rest to the imagination of the opponents so that it would increase their notoriety and by extension that of Konoha's. True to this, no one wanted to prod Konoha. It had proven time without number than trying to outnumber an Uzumaki or a part Uzumaki wasn't always the best thing to do. Rin leaned back and beamed at her brother. Look here, bro, I told you our pose was cool. She shoved their bingo book picture into his face. The 17-year-old boy swiped the book out of her hand and smirked a little at the picture. It's okay, but I would have looked even better if I had my Sharingan on. He tossed the picture back at her and settled in a little more comfortably in his chair. The two were sitting in a high-class restaurant. Rin was in a sparkling red white dress with white-heeled ninja sandals hidden under her dress. Her smooth shoulder-length blonde hair was tucked into a neat ponytail. Naruto was in a black shirt that had a suit drawn on it with black pants. It was the closest Rin could get for him to be in a suit, mission or no mission. They both wore black wigs and had on black contacts, to further show how generic they were supposed to look. They had been sent by their father on a mission to Kumo to assassinate a trafficking boss from Konoha who had fled to Kumo during a raid on his headquarters. He was continuing his operations in Kumo. The twins were to kill him without drawing attention to themselves. Naruto sipped his glass of water and scratched his cheek in boredom as he looked at their target, a well-built man in a sharp black tuxedo sitting on a plush reed seat. On each arm there were two women dressed in skimpy black dresses with no other distinguishing feature, so Naruto didn't bother trying to memorize their faces. How do you think we should do this? He asked his sister. The girl hummed and lightly ran her pointer finger over the rim of her glass of water, pursing her ruby red lips in thought. How about poison? Contact poison, he added. Agreed. I'll do it. He seems to like women more than he likes men, she said playfully. Naruto rolled his eyes. Obviously, just, be careful, okay? I don't want to bail you out of trouble again. She laughed behind her hands and kicked his shin. That was one time. She then slipped on a pair of elbow-length red gloves that the back of the hands were laced with poison, smirking at her younger twin and saying, "Watch this." Little did Mr. Kaoru know was that weeks before today, the twins had been systematically destroying his trafficking network, burning every route he had in any country until all that was left was to cut off the head of the snake. He didn't even have a house to go back to if or when he left the restaurant. Naruto watched on as a small cough hit their target and he used that opportunity to lead both of them out of the restaurant. Mr. Kaoru wouldn't survive the night. As they were far away from the restaurant, the girl twin took off her gloves and set them on fire with a simple fire jutsu. Meanwhile Naruto sealed up the ashes in a scroll to scatter it far and wide. It was a longer class mission, 3 months long to be precise, but they were now clear to go back to Konoha for a break. The angel of Konoha bashfully slipped behind a tree to take off her dinner dress and replace it with her combat uniform, slipping on her Junin flak jacket and forehead protector when she was done. Her uniform was particularly horrible when it came to stealth missions, but she made up with her speed. Naruto too climbed into a tree and changed into his Junin combat uniform, tying his forehead protector on his left upper arm. He patiently waited for his sister to finish dressing as he allowed random thoughts to enter his mind. In Konoha, even though they could very well work and live separately, they had both been dubbed the strongest ninjas there, and pretty much all the other places they were individually a rank, only those that weren't up to date with the bingo book challenged them. It was a non-verbal agreement between the twins that they wouldn't always fight together, they would work separately 10% of the time. The red demon silently dropped down beside his sister when she tied on her, so that they could begin their run back to Konoha. Even though it was well past midnight by the time they arrived, the first place the Ghost Flash reported was to the Hokage, their father. Naruto stood at attention while his sister chose to laxly sit down on the window sill, twirling a strand of her soft, blonde hair which was now out of the ponytail. The red-haired twin handed over the written mission report to the Hokage and said, "Mission complete, Lord Fourth." Minato looked at him with raised eyebrows, then he remembered that at the moment he wasn't their father, rather he was the Hokage. He flipped through the neatly written report and asked, "Any complications?" "None to note of," the boy answered curtly. "We were wondering why you told us to return immediately. Rin wanted to go for a little shopping." The girl snorted. "And you wanted to check out that damn horn dog." A corner of Minato's lips quirked up in amusement and he chuckled as he rubbed his forehead. He was really sleepy. "I wanted you guys back here in time for the Chunin exams," he said quickly before Naruto could retort to Rin's taunt. "That's next week. If we ran at full speed it would have taken us 3 days." Naruto pointed out and sat down on the chair in front of the desk. He leaned back and folded his sleeved arms behind his head. The twins' choice of weapons, 2 tantos, were leaning at the far corner of their father's office, near the door. I know, Is it so bad that I want my kids back home? Rin giggled and shook her head in exasperation. Don't try the guilt card with us, Dad. You know it won't work. The mission report had ended. Now they were speaking with their father. Minato laughed and sat back on his chair. I guess not. But I honestly just wanted you guys back home. 3 months is a long time, you know. Years of being the Hokage hadn't been too kind the man. Streaks of grey peppered in his blonde hair and light crow's feet were at the corners of his eyes, no wrinkles just yet. He had even lightened up on how he treated his children and the people who worked under him. He looked at both of his older children proudly, one who looked back at him with a small smile in his eyes and the other who looked back while she was picking her nose. He swiftly ignored that. They were now much stronger than him and he wasn't afraid to admit it. We send messenger hawks back to you and Mikoto every week, Dad. Naruto said as he looked at the pictures on his old man's desk. Pictures of him and his 2 other siblings as babies. When the twins had graduated from the academy. One of him standing proudly in the center of the snow stadium after he had finished beating the last opponent, his sister. He initially wanted to forfeit but his twin insisted that she too wanted to truly find out who was stronger between them. She was almost as fast as he was but she couldn't make ghost clones or nearly half of the speed-oriented jutsu he could. Though physically speaking, her regeneration was higher than his and her strength was much, much higher. At that time, he was stronger than her. Now that they were Junin and at the peak of their shinobi careers at such a young age, they were both as strong as the other. If they were ever to fight without holding back, their speed alone would tear a hole in space and time, creating a black hole, Minato theorized. That fact was never proven since no one wanted to take that chance. Though the twins did spar, they merely set limits. The next picture was of Mikoto, the youngest Namika's prodigy, grinning ear to ear with her newly minted proudly shining around her neck. Her own combat uniform was a deep blue and black battle kimono. She had on black shorts and black knee-high socks. Strapped onto her back was also a katana, which was one of the bladed requirement if you ever wanted to be called an Uzumaki. The others were the chakra chains, the chakra levels, chakra density, regeneration, a genetically high fuinjutsu proficiency, red hair, purple eyes, and to a much lesser extent, the fiery personality. The last picture there was of the whole Namika's family on the day of the Kyubi festival when the twins were 12-year-olds and already Junin. It showed Mikoto dragging her older siblings to a booth as she beamed at the camera. Both twins showed various degrees of amusement at this, Rin's much more than Naruto, and Minato sent a thumb up to the camera as ate some cotton candy. Their mother's D was still a very sore spot to them but it didn't stop them from living for her. The man shook off the memories and spoke. You guys should probably stay in Konoha these 3 months the Chunin exams are holding here. Of course we will. We want to be there when Miko wins. Rin said as she pumped her fist in the air. Naruto nodded. This whole Chunin exam is just a formality. She's got it in the bag. It couldn't be seen on his expressionless and almost even dull voice but his purple eyes burned brightly. What do you think, father? Speaking from the Hokage's standpoint, I'm not meant to be partial and choose who to win from Konoha. He then leaned to them conspiratorially and they leaned in as well. But from the father's point of view there is no way she would lose to anyone. Rin whooped and laughed. The old Namikaze then put on his serious face and Naruto signaled for his sister to keep quiet. Rin, you're going to be keeping an eye on the 4 gates and Naruto, I want you to be with me here until the exams start. Sure, they both said as they exchanged suspicious looks. What of when the exams actually start? Naruto asked. Both of you will be my guards in the cage's box, which will be during the 3rd part of the exams. Nothing unusual there. Naruto and Rin were his escorts if he was to ever leave the village. You two will be part of the patrol squad in the 2nd part. Anko will brief you. He allowed the sinister air to linger before he finally said. Dismissed. Oh, next week. The Forest of Death. Thank you Sasuke. Sakura shouted but the Uchiha ignored her in favor of looking at the Namikaze genin. He had the Earth Scroll. I think we've got enough. Mikoto said as she kicked the side of her former opponents. Yeah, let's get going. I'm getting this bad feeling, Sakura Haruno, the team's medic, said as she hugged herself. Her teal-green eyes looked around, suspicious of the goosebumps rippling up her arms. Mikoto furrowed her brow at this and looked at the sun. It was about noon and it was their 3rd day in the forest. This being because they had gotten lost on their 1st day there. Her eyes widened suddenly as her senses screamed, just before a giant green snake shot out of the dark forest around them and swallowed her whole before she could fully draw her lethally bladed weapon, tunneling onward in a rampage of trees and fleeing birds. Mikoto. Sakura screamed and a heavy feeling settled in as the snake disappeared back into the forest. Her legs shook under the pressure and she looked around frantically for the source. Sasuke prepared himself for an attack. Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. A voice hissed from the patch of trees directly in front of them and a pale-faced man slinked out from the darkness. The Sannin savored the way Sakura looked 10 seconds to passing out. Sweat poured down Sasuke's face. He continued. I thought her records called her a prodigy, like those damn twins, but she was taken out as easily as any other genin. Pitiful. I was hoping for a little more entertainment. His reptilian gaze turned back from the path of collapsed trees Mikoto had been taken, to the petrified boy. Guess I'll have to settle for you, Sasuke. He drew out the Uchiha's name, licking his lips like a wolf about to feast. Who the hell are you? Sasuke yelled as he struggled to stay on his feet. What do you want? It's a shame you haven't heard of me. The Sannin gathered himself, taller enough to eclipse Sasuke's hope for escape. I am Orochimaru of the Sannin. He began slowly walking towards them, and with each step the thick, palpable killer intent increased. To think you children can withstand this much. Sakura's eyes rolled to the back of her head and she passed out, tipping back like a falling tree. Orochimaru chortled. I stand corrected. He hissed, continuing. I have come to make a proposition to you, Sasuke. He was about 3 feet away from Sasuke. The boy was panting under the invisible strain to his body. Everything in him screamed for him to run away, but he couldn't move. You want to be stronger than Mikoto, rest her poor soul. I can help you with that. We can help each other. How? The boy stammered, going in and out of consciousness. Take my gift, the rest is up to you. He hissed and his fangs grew longer, his neck stretched to Sasuke and the boy still couldn't move. Before he could bite down on his neck, an explosion shook the ground, throwing off his concentration and making him reel his neck back. The silence that fell around them was foreboding. The Sannin made sure to spread out his killer intent even more. Then Mikoto walked out of the darkness of the forest, though still somehow immaculately clean. Her blue eyes hardened as she looked at her team, Sakura lying on the ground in a faint and Sasuke barely even able to turn his eyes to look at her. She then looked back at the Sannin that had caused this and grit her teeth in a feral growl, her shoulder-length red hair frizzing out uncontrollably. She got into the first stage of her Uzumaki Kenjutsu stance, her legs in a ready position and both of her hands squeezing her katana handle as she held it to her right side vertically. Orochimaru looked at her in amusement, making sure to show her how much beneath him she was. She lives. The snake bee that was on the katana gently dripped on her hands. Leave now, or else. Or else what? He taunted, licking his lips in anticipation, feeling the tendrils of killer intent pushing back against his own. I will kill you. You can try, child. Give me all you've got. He didn't want to know why his killer intent wasn't affecting her. He might as well humor her in a short fight. Let's pray you're as good as those twins. We'll see. She said quietly and bent her legs a bit before she lunged forward and her body turned into a partly visible blur, not even close to how fast her brother and sister were, but Mid-Chunin was still considerably fast. Orochimaru slithered to the side as a katana materialized and intended to slice off his arm. His palm struck the weapon as it came down, but the girl used the momentum of the blow to send a spinning heel kick that was in turn blocked by the older man's forearm. She slashed upwards with her weapon and twirled the weapon once on her hand once before she stabbed it into the ground and leaped over it, her hands still holding the weapon, forcing the man cross his arms to block the barefaced dropkick to his face. She kept cycling kicks at him until she was about to drop on the ground. She rolled away from the axe kick and twirled her weapon again, holding it in a reverse grip. Orochimaru had a kunai slip out of his right sleeve into his hand. The girl ran at him full tilt and the fight continued. The speed and intensity of the fight increased with every strike. The man's grin stretched wider with each smooth motion of her attacks until he finally grew bored of her focus on his neck, spinning in a circle and tripping the girl. For a quarter of a second, Mikoto was suspended in the air by the leg sweep, shocked defenseless. Orochimaru's right leg shot up, driving a heel into her chest and evidently ending the fight in her with a hard, painful exhale of air. The man looked down at the tired girl and was about to slip a knife behind her ear, just to spite her father, but his kunai was violently knocked out of his hand, courtesy of another kunai. He looked in the direction the weapon was thrown from and briefly scowled at the Naruto, who was sitting on a branch, and Rin, who was sitting at the base of the tree. The female twin sent him a finger-wiggling wave and the boy gave him a small frown. I think that's enough, Snake Sanin. So, you finally came. Took longer than I expected. The man bit out a sneer. A second late and you would have lost your sister. Oh no, make no mistake, old man, we've been here since the beginning. We just wanted to see how she would do against you. The female blonde speedster said lightly. The snake summoner wondered how they were able to hide from his senses. Naruto then added, plus, it would have been nice if you were clearer on why you were here, you know. His sister nodded in agreement. The red-haired teen dropped off the branch and as his feet touched the ground a short, quick hum resonated from his body outwards like a bubble of air, cancelling out the older man's killer intent. Orochimaru scowled deeper at this but kept his eyes fixed on the twins. The boy looked over his shoulder at his twin sister and she nodded, walking up to the old Sanin, wearing a fearless stare. She grabbed her downed sister and her teammates, weightlessly slinging them over her shoulder and hefting them back to the tree. She eased the genin down. Naruto stayed silent as this happened, his eyes on the Sanin. He mumbled, that katana doesn't feel like it's for you, right Mikoto? The girl nodded timidly. I think a long sword suits you more. Or a broad sword. Rin piped up as she ran her hands over her sister to check for any wounds. She wasn't a medic by any stretch of the imagination but she was using her chakra senses to scan her body for any openings or abrasions. Or a claymore, Naruto said, crossing his arms and refusing to let Orochimaru out of his sight. Agreed. What do you think, Mikoto? Does a claymore sound better for you? She commanded Sasuke to sit down when he stubbornly made for a kunai, feeling his courage return after Naruto cancelled the effects of the Sanin's killer intent. Yeah, I think that one has better reach. My katana is more for elegance, I'm looking for power. Mikoto muttered as she painfully sat up. We'll go shopping after the exams. Naruto said flippantly. For now, we have other problems. The sadistic Sanin did not intend to fight either of them at the same time. The last time he did, he was forced to retreat, armless, on one leg, heavily concussed, with a broken nose and a missing eye. His ego burned like the sun. Ambushing them together was probably his worst idea ever. He gasped in shock as there was a short, violent electrical hum directly in front of him before a hand reached forward from the humming haze and harshly grabbed his neck. The rest of Naruto's body materialized along with his arm. The Naruto that stood guard in front of his siblings exploded into red mist. The snake Sanin clenched his eyes shut, instinctively knowing that the teen had his Sharingan activated. We warned you, Snake Sanin, do not come after anyone we know. That includes our family. He squeezed his fists, tightening the man's. I'll be seeing you soon, boy. And his whole body shriveled up and dried. Naruto dropped the snakeskin clone, eyes blank and his Sharingan blinked off. He left the moment we made him aware of our presence. Damn P. Rin whispered. She turned to the members of Team 7 and said. You guys should probably head to the tower. Hi, big sis. And don't drop your guard, that old snake might return at any time. Naruto supplied, pushing his hands into his pockets but not facing them. He was busily scanning the forest for the Sanin's chakra, contemplating releasing his summons to give chase. Though Naruto shook the idea out of his head, that was overkill. Hi, big bro, the girl saluted. Rin looked a little indecisively, sending Naruto a pleading look and when he shrugged with a chuckle, she dove at her baby sister, hugging her with all her might. Sis, can't breathe. Don't you ever make us worry like that, you hear? She released her and looked over her again worryingly. Mikoto nodded and Rin smiled softly. It was Naruto that spoke what was on her mind. Know when to retreat, kid. Don't let your emotions control your actions, and don't come off as predictable. Your attacks were too obvious. He appeared in front of her and ruffled her hair, his eyes crinkling to show that he was trying to smile. You did good. Thank you, big bro, big sis. I promise, I'll make you guys proud. She puffed out her chest and her cheeks in a strong pose, which crumbled when her big sister bopped her nose playfully. We know you will, just don't get hurt too badly along the way. The air hummed, like a swarm of mad bees were flying about 20 feet away before Naruto exploded into red mist and Rin burst into a shower of yellow lights. So cool. Watching her siblings use their signature body flicker techniques was always interesting. Naruto used a mixture of the standard body flicker but added in his own ghost speed release, which for some reason resulted in leaving an afterimage of him standing for a full minute until it crumbled into soft red mist. It was good for misdirecting opponents. Rin utilized what she called her flashy flicker, which incorporated her bloodline ability, the flash step release. The flash step release was a watered-down version of Naruto's ghost speed, which was significantly higher than High Junin speed. This speed though left a short trail of afterimages in her wake. This would have made it predictable, but she was faster than predictable. The afterimages left behind stayed for half a second before bursting into yellow flashes of light, creating an illusion of popping lights appearing and disappearing every quarter of a mile. She negated this effect in her flashy flicker by mixing her bloodline with the standard body flicker, so that instead of a trail of after images following after her every speedy movement, it took every after image that was to be made from her starting point to the end all in one, and these formed small flashes of light, perfectly hiding her movements until it was too late. Shisui Uchiha would be proud. The only known problem with the twins' bloodline speed was that a vibration occurred split seconds before they moved, directly from their bodies to the air. The volume depended on the distance and the seriousness of the movement. They negated it by moving 50 feet with each run before making another body flicker. Mikoto wasn't as fast as them, ever for a Namikaze, who were the sole clan that had the flash step and ghost speed release bloodline, but she was faster than her peers. The problem with fully unlocking her speedy potential was the super dense chakra that was weighing her down. Her thick bone and muscle density and, surprising enough, the fragility of her skin if she ever moved that fast, even if she unlocked the flash step release. A normal person's skin would burn up at the speeds Rin ran at, and the person's organs would out of their be at Naruto's speed, since for lesser experienced people, running that fast was like swimming at the very bottom of the ocean through a very thin tube. The amount of squeezing pressure on their bodies was monumental. They would explode like grapes in a microwave. Minato Namikaze was able to easily use the flash step release, since he had unlocked it when he was much younger, and he incorporated his flying thunder god jutsu to make him faster. The twins declined learning that jutsu since they too knew that moving even faster than they usually do would jeopardize a lot of things. They also declined learning another of their father's signature jutsu, Rasengan. The fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, sighed tiredly after his twin children finished their report on what happened. Do you at least have a guess why he was there? He sent a snake to swallow Mikoto and ignored Sakura, so I can only guess he was after Sasuke. Rin surmised, perching her head in a thinking pose, seated on a chair across from her father's desk. The old Namikaze hummed in thought. Do you think it's like when he attacked both of you in hidden smoke? It was a mission they took 2 years after they became full Junin. To go and assist the smoke leader round up the mutated pests that were cutting through his shinobi force. The cause of the mutated creatures was obvious, but attracting the ghost flash was a bonus for the Sannin. He had originally wanted to take any of their bodies, preferably Naruto's, but had to retreat with his tail between his legs because he found out what truly happened when a powerful Namikaze procreated with an equally powerful Uzumaki. The results were 2 speed demons with massive depths of chakra. I believe so. He kept spouting that he wanted our bodies. The only thing that comes to mind on why he wants our bodies cements him as AP. Rin huffed with her arms crossed tightly. The fact remains that Orochimaru has now revealed himself. That makes him a threat. Minato said as he propped his elbows on the desk and his head on his fists. He looked at the 2 Junin in the office. You want us to hunt him down? Naruto proposed. No. That will distract you two if any other person attacks Konoha. Save it till after the exams. I'll assign Kakashi and Yugao. Understood. The twins saluted and marched out of their father's office. They left the tower and paused outside. Rin looked at Naruto expectantly. He looked back at her and she caught a message flashing in his eyes. The corners of her lips lifted up and she laughed loudly. He pursed his own lips to suppress his own laugh, but he did pat her shoulder as they parted ways, one mission in mind. Find and kill Orochimaru of the Sannin. Neither of them liked leaving a mission or even AM unfinished, so if they killed Orochimaru then their mission to smoke was completed, even though the fat smoke leader insisted that the mission was completed. So now that they had parted ways, it increased their chances of finding him if they actively put in an effort, but that wasn't what Naruto had communicated to his twin, merely look around passively and to not allow the snake summoner to escape again. Naruto would search first while Rin would cover for him. The first thing Naruto did was to head back to the Forest of Death and activate his Sharingan to find the Sanin's chakra trail. The man's putrid, reptilian chakra trail was purplish in color and was slowly being overpowered by the nature chakra in the Forest of Death. The experienced hunter stayed on the trail and frowned sharply when it ended at the west exit of the forest. He looked around, his Sharingan eyes spinning lazily, and he pulsed his chakra quickly. The air hummed and a visible ripple of sound expanded out of his body. The bubble disappeared 10 feet away from him and he knelt down on the ground when he felt what his senses told him. A single strand of silver-gray hair. There weren't that many silver-gray-haired people in Konoha or even outside of Konoha, since the trait needed to have this color hair was for the holder to be exposed to undue stress from an early age, or that the person's descendants were exposed to this stress. The 17-year-old Junin examined the strand, but his dujutsu couldn't tell him anything other than the obvious, male and moistured. The boy grunted and pulsed his chakra one more time before he stored the short strand of silver hair into a sealing scroll, to be further examined after he looked through the Konoha migration log for any possible suspect. The first name he cancelled out was Kakashi Hatake, since he and his sister were with him when the killer intent reached them in the tower. Spreading out his killer intent through the forest wasn't really the smartest thing Orochimaru had done. The buzzing air of vibrations Naruto expelled from his body were a sort of physical manifestation of his sensory ability. It acted as more accurate feelers for anything in the air that was bigger than a molecule. This meant that he had to train himself to discern between the grass and the strand of hair he caught. It was incredibly hard to use, so he only used it during dire situations. He called it his hypersenses or hyper-awareness, and apparently now Kumo knew about it. He shook off the thought as his body burst into red mist, which fell on the grass and disappeared. Orochimaru revealing himself could not be taken lightly, and it wasn't that Minato took the Sannin lightly. Rather, he just wanted to ensure the defense of Konoha if or when an attack happened, instead of launching a full-scale search for the snake summoner. Unknown to any of them, all the way in Am and deep in the bowls of the Amekkage, a red-haired man looked on as his followers prepared themselves to capture the first-tailed beast and probably the hardest to ever reach. He wasn't going with them, but since Sasori of the Red Sands, the Mad Bomber, Deidara, the Zombie Brothers, Hiden and Kakazu, the Zero-Tailed Beast, Kisame, the Orange Mask Uchiha, Tobi, the Angel of Am, Conan, and finally the last member of the Akatsuki, paired with Kisame, who went by the name Ringo Kamitachi of Sunagakur. This person wore a sand camo turban around his head and shoulders, making his silver eyes glow eerily from within, while his red and black clouded cloak covered his torso. When it came to fighting the Ghost Flash, there was never a safe way to go about it, and even though their spy in their organization, Zetsu, had ensured that the Namikaze family were going for a week-long vacation out of Fire Country after the Chunin exams, it was possibly the most vulnerable they were able to get Mikoto Namikaze in a very long time. All the members of the Akatsuki were to fight and defeat the individually S-rank twins, their S-rank father, and capture their quickly maturing sibling. Nagato would simply follow along to observe, since he wasn't ready to make himself known yet. Each member of the rogue organization had 3 months to gather and prepare for the encounter. Collecting tailed beasts would start after they had gotten the 9 tails, which was going to be the very last beast they would tear out of its Jinchuriki. If all else failed and the Namikaze family decided to remain in Konoha, then they would just have to attack them there. They were ready for that. Eliminating their prime threat was very important. Naruto Namikaze, the Red Demon, was the fastest ninja on the planet and was also their biggest threat. He was to be K immediately. What hope did the Speedster family hope when 8's rank missing ninja came after Mikoto? That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.